Okay, let's look at how to solve this function. All right, how to answer the questions about the following function. So we have f of x is equal to 3x squared minus x minus 2, and this is a quadratic function. Now for the a part is the point -1, 2 on the graph of f. Now what this means is what this question means is that whenever x is -1, your y coordinate should be what, a 2. All right, so we have an ordered pair. -1 is what, x, and your 2 is what, y. So if you plug in -1 for x in the given function, if this point is truly on the graph of f, then we should have an output of what, 2. If we are getting something different, then that means that point is not what on the graph of f. So let's find out. You have f of -1. Wherever you see x, you plug in -1. And then you have 3 plus 1 minus 2. So 4 minus 2 gives you 2. Now, f of -1 is equal to 2, which is what? True. So if x is -1, your corresponding y is 2. So this is true. All right. So your f of x is like, this is your output, which is the same as your y coordinate. So you have to have that at the back of your mind, that your f of x is equal to y. So if you plug in -1 for x, it should yield a 2 if that point is truly on the graph of f. If it gives you something different, okay, if it gives you a number other than 2, then that means it's not true. So we're gonna pick yes, because f of -1 is equal to 2. Now for the second one, and I'm going to erase this part. If x is equal to 2, what is f of x? So if x is 2, what is f of x? So in place of x, you're going to plug in 2. And this is 3 times 4 minus 2 minus 2. So you have 12 minus 2 minus 2. And that gives us what? 10 minus 2 is what? 8. So if x is 2, your function f of x is equal to what? 8. Now, using the information in the previous step, we're going to list a point on the graph of f where x is equal to 2. So this is where you put your ordered pair. So starting with x coordinate followed by your y coordinate, which is the f of x, which is 8. Sorry, this is 2. When x is 2, your f of x, which is y, is equal to 8. Now let's look at C. This time we were given the f of x to be -2, and we have to solve for x. So if f of x is -2, we need to find what? Our x. So from this function, if f of x is -2, we're going to solve for what? X. So let's look at this. This is going to be a quadratic equation. So we're going to send -2 to the right side of the equal to sign, so that'll make that part positive. So this is the same as adding 2 on both sides of the equation. So you have 3x squared minus x equal to 0. And if you factor x out, you have 3x minus 1 equal to 0. So your x is equal to 0, or your 3x minus 1 is equal to 0. So you have 3x is equal to 1, and your x is equal to 1/3. All right, so we have two separate answers. We have when x is 0 and when x is 1/3. And if you want to put this as an ordered pair, you have when x is 0, your y is -2. Or when x is 1/3, your y is -2. So you put that here. 0, -2, comma, 1/3, comma, -2. Now we need a domain, and one way to remember this, okay, one way that is easier when getting the domain, okay, is to know this fact, okay, and the fact is that a function that has numbers for which it is undefined if it contains a radical. So if you have, let's say, a square root in your equation, or if you have a denominator, then you have a restriction, okay, when it comes to the domain. But if you don't have any radicand, if you don't have any denominator in your function given, then your domain is always going to be all real numbers. Okay, so this function, there are no restrictions. So the domain is going to be what? -infinity to infinity. Okay, and this is because we don't have a square root or a radicand. Okay, let me not be specific. We don't have a radicand. Okay, no radicand, no denominator in the given function. Okay, in the function. So therefore, there is no restriction, and your domain will always be all real numbers. So we have -infinity and infinity. Now, for E, we need to get the x-intercept. So for x-intercept, it is when your y is equal to 0. So to determine your x-intercept, you have to set y equal to 0. And our y in this case is what? The f of x. That's the output. So 3x squared minus x minus 2 equal to 0. So this is a quadratic equation. And to find this, we have to multiply the coefficient of x squared by the constant -2 and write that down. So that's your constant. And we need to find two integers. When multiplied will give you -6, and when added will give you -1. So the two functions, the two integers that we have is 2 and -3. If you multiply 2 by -3, that gives you -6. If you add 2 to -3, that gives you -1. So that is satisfied. So you have 3x squared in place of -x, you're going to put plus 2x minus 3x. And you have to factor by grouping. You pull x out, you have 3x plus 2. Negative 1 out, you have 3x plus 2. So you have x minus 1, 3x plus 2, all equal to 0. So you have to set each of them to 0, okay, each of the term to 0, and find your x. So x is 1, your x is equal to negative 2 over 3. So the x-intercept we have is negative 2 over 3, and then positive 1. And for y-intercept, it is when your x is equal to what? 0. So we're going to plug in what? 0 for x in the function. And we can clean this part. Okay, when watching this, you can pause. And when you get it, you can hit play and keep going. That's the nice thing about videos. You can always pause in between, work through it yourself, and then come back to find the answer. So we need y-intercept, and this is when your x values were 0. So in this function, wherever you see x, we're going to plug in what? 0. And you have what? Negative 2. So your y-intercept is negative 2. All right. I hope this helps. Thanks.